Hey guys, welcome to another video. I'm really excited about today's video. We're going to be jumping in. I'm going to show you how to build a scenario in Fusion. So if you're familiar with Fusion, you know just how powerful it is. There's so much you can do with Fusion. I love Fusion. And today we're going to start talking a bit about Fusion. I'm going to show you a pretty basic scenario today, but wanted to walk through and kind of break down step by step how I'm going to build that. So first, I'm going to tell you what it is we're going to build. So what we want to do in this example is I'm going to make a scenario where when a task is going to be needing to start within a month, I want to get a notification. So let's say, in this version, use this example, whenever this last task, when it's the start on day, so when I'm supposed to start that task within a month, I want to get an email notification basically, or I want to get notified that that hey, like the task is approaching for you to start working on this task. So that's what we're going to build in Fusion. Like I said, pretty simple scenario, and we're going to be using a directed update in order to accomplish this for us. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to put a comment on this task, a directed update saying, hey, this task is going to be due soon, or something like that. So yeah, we'll jump right in. So we're going to be here in Fusion. We're going to create a new scenario. And to start, we're going to do an Adobe Workfront. And for this one, we're going to do a custom API call right here. And then make sure you are on the right scenario, like connection right here on the production connection. You potentially will have multiple, so just make sure you're on the right connection. For the URL, so we're going to be bringing in the task data, right? Because we want to bring in this task, right? And so for the search, we want to do task/search because we're bringing in task data. We can leave this as it is, and then here in the query string, we're going to add under key. First, we're going to do fields, and here this is going to be the outputs. So these are the fields that we want this module to output. So for example, we want to output the task ID, and we need to output the planned start date, for example, because we're going to do this based off, it's supposed to start within 1 month, so we need to see when that date is. What else will we need? And ID plan start date. I think that's, oh, and then we're going to also do has notes. We'll add that, and I'll explain that in a sec. So we'll start with that. We might need to add some more things, but for now, those are going to be the 3 fields that we're going to output. And now we're going to start getting into the filtering, right? We don't want to bring in all the tasks. We only want to bring in the relevant task. So for this example, we'll filter by the task ID, and then we come in and then we get this task ID real quick. So most of the time, you're not going to do it based off just one task ID. Most of the time, I'd recommend doing it based off the template task ID, assuming you're using templates and you're creating projects from templates. That would be the better option. For the sake of this example, I'm just using this one task just so I can show you really simply, but it'd be the same concept. Just instead of ID, you would put template task ID. Like I'll write it just so you see it. How the format template task ID. So you want to make sure you write it like that in camel case. Yeah, but like I said, for this example, we'll just be looking at this one task just to make it really simple. Okay, so you have the ID, the task IDs. Remember, I'm just putting ID here, but we're looking at task. We're on the task level of the task is the object. So I add that. Then we'll say ID underscore mod in, because we're saying I want the task ID to be this. Okay, so that's going to bring in our task. Now, remember we wanted to only update it when the planned start date is due within a month. So we're going to now filter by that. So we'll say planned start date, and you do that camel case. And we're going to say $sign today plus 20 days. So again, that's the wildcard for today, and then we're adding basically 1 month, so 20 working days to that date. And then we're going to say that plan start date mod, and we're going to say less than or equal to. So we're going to say LTE for the value, which means less than or equal to. So we're saying if the planned start date is less than or equal to today plus 20 days or 1 month from now, then we want to bring it in. If not, then we're filtering it out. Okay. And I think that will work for now. In a lot of scenarios, you'll probably want to also filter by like project status, potentially task status, and you can bring in those filters here. We'll also be adding another filter in a different place in just a second. You can see that. But yeah, so it's recommended to try to filter as much as you can here that makes sense, because that will also help lower your number of operations. And so if you're filtering more out here, then it won't even, it won't fire the operation, and it'll save you operations in the long run. Okay, so for now, we'll leave it like that. I'll just save this real quick. Then it's best practice to always rename your modules, just especially as you're building out more complicated, more complex scenarios in Fusion, and then you're wanting to come in and troubleshoot, or you need to make edits. It makes it a lot easier if you can go in and say, okay, this module is doing this module is doing that. So for this, I'm just going to say get task data, because that's what this module is doing. It's getting that task information. And then we're just going to run this module just to make sure I did everything correctly, so we can look at it. Let's see. So this is the output. The data right now is empty. And the reason why is because, where's that? This task has a start on date that is greater than 1 month. So let's just, to double check, let's put this, today's the 26th. We'll just say it's due the 13th. So that is, within that 1 month. And let's run this again. And we'll see we have data this time. So we have just one collection. Move this over a bit. You can see these are the outputs that we put. So in that fields column here, ID, plan start date, has notes. That is what you'll see here in this data that's being output. So we have the task ID. It automatically gives us the name and the object code because we're a task, and then it's giving us that planned start date, and then also that has notes, which is false. What that means basically is that there's not a comment on that task. And I'll show you in just a moment why that's going to be important for us. Okay, so now we know we're bringing in the data we want, right? We're bringing in that task, and it's showing us the information we want, which is that planned start date. So now the next step would be to actually add that directed update. So we'll add a module. It will be a Workfront, and we're going to use the create record module. Again, make sure you're on the right connection. And then for the record type, we're going to use the note record type. And then here's where we're going to map the fields. So the fields we're going to need to map for this is going to be the object code, the text, the object ID, and the notify. Okay, so object code and object ID, you need to map those, or else it won't work. The Fusion won't recognize, and it just won't run. So you got to make sure you add those. The note text, that's what's kind of self-explanatory. That's what it's going to say. That's going to be the text. That's going to be written in that note or in that comment. And then the notify, that's what's going to make it a directed update. So instead of, if we just wanted to add a comment, add a note to a task, then you could omit the notify. But in this case, since we wanted to specifically notify someone, in this example, me, that like this task is going to be due soon, then that's why I wanted to notify or include this notify section. Okay, so for object code, this is going to be pretty easy. You're going to go down to the data. And so one thing I'll point out is you'll see this little number 1 here. It matches this. So, and also if you kind of hover over any of these fields, it pulsates. So that lets you know which module you're pulling that data from. Again, there's only one other module, so it's pretty easy in this case. When you have multiple modules and you're referencing one that's multiple steps away, this is helpful to know. So we're going to go down to that data, and then here's that object code. So again, pretty self-explanatory. Object code is going to match up with object code. And then I'm just going to map object ID with the ID here. So the object ID in this case is the task ID, because that's the object we're on, because it's a note on the task. So now we're going to format what we want the note to say. So let's say you need to start this task soon. And then let's say we want to also include when you're supposed to start. And then we'll just bring in that planned start date right here. So we need to start this task soon, and then it'll bring this planned start date. And then here we're going to notify me. So what we're going to do is get my ID for my user. So if I just find myself real quick, and then if I just go up here, this is my user ID, and then put that in here, and then for user team, just make sure you select user, because again, it's my user ID, and I'll hit save. Okay, so that should be good. Let me save that, and then again, best practice, let me just rename this. I'm going to say add directed update, because that's what this module is doing. And okay, there we go. So one more thing I'm going to add before I run this is a filter between these two. So remember how I mentioned that has notes field, and that would be bringing that in and explaining why it's important. So this is why. So what we don't want is to run this scenario, right? And I update, hey, this task is due. And then I run it again, and now it updates me again, right? And let's say, depending on how often we want to run this, let's say we're running it every morning. I don't want to get an email every morning that this task is coming up, right? And so when I have this has notes is equal to, we'll say, false, that means that there's not a comment on it already. So yeah, basically this means that once I receive the notification, once this directed update is added to the task, then I won't get another one, at least not from this specific scenario. And so I'll add that, and I'll add a name here. I'll say doesn't have note. Let's call it that. Okay. And as I was talking, it reminded me of another field. I kind of mentioned this, but I'm just going to bring it in just to show you. We obviously don't want to do this if the status of the task is complete, because if the task is already completed, there's no need for me to get notified, obviously. So let me just filter this out. For this example, like I said, there's one task I know it's not going to be complete, but just to show you, and this is how you should build it. So we're saying the status complete is not in, which means not equal to or is not. So basically we don't want the status to be complete. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, and then let's just go into the task, and then let's run it and see if See if we did it right. Okay, so we got green. It looks like everything ran correctly. We have an output. So now let's go over here and let's refresh. And look, so there's that directed update. Like, hey, you need to start this task soon. Plan start date, boom. One thing you'll notice is this is not very pretty. This is kind of confusing. It's like, okay, here's the date, but then you have all this added information that's not really relevant. So let me show you now how to clean this up. And then let's also say we want to bring in the plan completion date, right? We want to say, hey, this task is due soon or it's coming up soon. This is when you're supposed to start it. And we also want you to know when you're supposed to be done, so you have that on your radar. So in order to do that, we're going to have to change a couple things. We're going to come in here to this first module, and we're going to add to the fields that are being output, we're going to add the planned completion date. Okay. And then I'm just going to run this module real quick, just so it outputs that data. So now we're outputting the planned completion date as well as the planned start date. And now let's modify the note real quick. Okay, so what we're going to do to make it prettier is for the planned start date, we're going to delete that. We're going to go up here to the date and time section, and we're going to say format date. And then here, we're going to go back in and bring in, again, the planned start date, but we're going to format it as month, day, year. Okay, and then we'll add planned, or I'll say due on instead. And then we'll do the same thing. So we'll do that format date, bring in the planned completion date, and we want to format it the same way. So that month, day, year. Okay. And we'll hit OK, and we'll save that. So I'm going to run it, but now we're going to see if this filter works. So I'm going to run it completely, and now that there is a no, what should happen is, as you'll see, it will get stopped by this filter and won't run all the way through. So, yep, just like I said, so you see we have this filter. It didn't make it through because there is, it's not false, right? It's true that it has a note. So it's not going to run and notify me again. So let me delete this. Okay, now let's come back here. Let's run it again. And this time it went all the way through. Let's refresh. And there it is. And so now you can see the date is much, the formatting is much prettier. It looks better. You can actually, quickly see what it's saying in the planned start date, the due on date, and with this being a directed update, you'll also get an email. So I'm also getting an email notification, which I'll actually show you right here. I already have my email pulled up. You'll see I have these messages. Let me show them all. So here it is. Here's the latest one. Here's those other ones. I got notified. Hey, here's the that notification. You need to start the task soon. Here's a planned start date. Here's the due on date. If I wanted to open it directly in Workfront, you can click here, see it in Workfront, and that would take me into the task. So there you go. That's how you would use Fusion to automatically create that directed update. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can build this, and depending on your specific needs. And one last thing I'll mention is on the schedule. This is where you can determine how often you want this to run. So for example, let's say we want this to run every morning. Every week morning, we could say every morning at 6 a.m. we're going to run this scenario. Or we could say, just we want to, save on scenarios, let's say every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Or every Monday. It's depending on your needs, you can modify that. Or if you want it to run more often, right? If you want to know, you don't really need to run it more than once a day, to be honest, because the data you're pulling in with that planned start date is not going to change throughout the day unless someone manually goes in and updates it. But yeah, so that is how you would build that scenario in Fusion. Let me just, one last thing I forgot to mention, you should also always name your scenarios. So I'll just say add directed update to coming soon task. Your company probably will have some sort of naming convention. If not, you should maybe consider that coming up with a good way to um, name your scenarios again for keeping things organized and clean and easy to find, easy to manage. So, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that was interesting. And definitely let me know in the comments if there's any specific scenarios you'd like to watch me build. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. And definitely stay tuned. I'll be uploading more videos about Fusion, showing different Fusion examples, building some new and other scenarios. In a maybe either next video or in the next couple videos, I'm going to show you a little hack, if you will, a little trick for helping you know the name of fields to bring into Fusion. I know, for example, some fields are pretty easy, planned start date, planned completion date. Um, those are easy to know and understand. But for example, like the has notes is one that you're maybe not as familiar with. So I'm going to show you a way to find all those fields um, so you can use them when building out your scenarios. So definitely stay tuned for that video. That'll be coming up soon. And yeah, so hopefully this is helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.